The morning sun rose over colony Kepler 442b, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Han Sol Kim stood on the observation deck of the orbital defense platform, watching the planet below wake up. 50,000 humans lived down there, now. They had built farms, schools, and homes. They had made this alien world into something that felt like Earth. Han Sol was a commander in the human stellar defense force. He had seen many worlds, fought in many battles, but this place was special. This was where humans had proven they could build something beautiful far from home. "Commander Kim," called a voice behind him. He turned to see Lieutenant Park approaching with a data pad. "We have a message from Dr. So-Young Park on the surface. She says it's urgent." Han Sol took the pad and read the message. Dr. Park was one of the colony's best scientists. She studied alien life and helped humans understand how to live on new worlds. The message was short but important. "Found something big underground. Need to talk to you right away. This changes everything." Han Sol frowned. Dr. Park was not the type to get excited about nothing. If she said it was big, it was big. "Prepare. My shuttle," he told the lieutenant. "I'm going down to the surface." The shuttle ride took 30 minutes. Han Sol used the time to think about the colony. When humans first arrived here 5 years ago, the planet was empty. No intelligent life, just plants and small animals. The air was good to breathe. The soil was rich for farming. It seemed like the perfect new home. The Galactic Council had approved the human settlement. All the proper forms were filled out. All the rules were followed. Humans were still new to the galaxy. They wanted to prove they could follow the laws and be good neighbors to the alien species. The most important law was simple. It was called the First Galactic Covenant. No species could deliberately harm the children of another species. This law was 10,000 years old. It was written after terrible wars that destroyed entire civilizations. The law was sacred. Every species in the galaxy followed it without question. Han Sol's shuttle landed at the main colony settlement. The place was busy with activity. Children ran between the buildings, playing games and laughing. Adults worked in the fields or tended to the machines that kept the colony running. It looked peaceful and happy. Dr. So-Young Park was waiting for him at the shuttle pad. She was a small woman with intelligent eyes and graying hair. She had been studying alien worlds for 20 years. Han Sol had known her since his early days in the Defense Force. "Han Sol," she said, walking quickly beside him. "Thank you for coming so fast. We need to talk somewhere private." She led him to her laboratory in the science building. The lab was full of computers, screens, and strange equipment that Han Sol didn't understand. Dr. Park closed the door and activated a privacy shield. "What I'm about to show you must stay secret for now," she said. "We found something under the colony, something that will make every species in the galaxy want this planet." She turned on a large screen that showed a three-dimensional map of the planet's underground. Deep below the surface, Han Sol could see glowing veins of something. That looked like crystal. "Quantum crystals," Dr. Park explained. "The largest deposit ever discovered. These crystals power faster than light travel. Every spaceship in the galaxy needs them, and we're sitting on enough to supply the entire galaxy for 1,000 years. Han Sol felt his stomach drop. This was not good news. Quantum crystals were the most valuable substance in known space. Wars had been fought over much smaller deposits. "How many people know about this?" he asked. "Just my research team. 6 people. I made them all swear to keep it secret until we could figure out what to do." Han Sol nodded. Dr. Park was smart to be careful. If word got out that humans had found the galaxy's biggest treasure, every alien empire would want to take it. "We need to tell Earth Command immediately," he said. "They need to know what we're dealing with." While Dr. Park prepared her full report, Han Sol walked through the colony. He stopped at the school where Jiwoo Choi was teaching a class of human children. Jiwoo was the colony administrator and a mother of 3. Her youngest son, Taemin Lee, was only 8 years old, but already showed signs of being very smart. "Commander." "Kim!" Taemin called out when he saw Han Sol through the window. "Are you here to check on us?" Han Sol smiled and waved. The boy reminded him of his own childhood on Earth. Curious, brave, and full of hope for the future. "Just making sure everyone is safe," Han Sol replied. But as he watched the children in their classroom, learning about their new world, Han Sol felt a cold fear in his chest. If the wrong people learned about the crystals, these children might not be safe much longer. That evening, Han Sol sent an encrypted message to Earth Command. He also sent a copy to Ambassador Wu Jin Nam at the Galactic Council headquarters. The ambassador needed to know what was coming. The reply from Earth came quickly. Protect the colony at all costs. Do not let anyone remove our people from their legal home. More ships are coming. The reply from Ambassador Nam took longer. When it finally arrived, the news was bad. Council has already heard rumors about your discovery. The Drakhtari Hegemony and Velshiran Syndicate are demanding an emergency session. They claim humans have no right to such valuable resources. They want the planet declared a galactic resource zone. Prepare for the worst. Han Sol stood again on his observation deck, looking down at the colony. The lights of human homes twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere down there, children were getting ready for bed. Their parents were reading them stories and tucking them in safely. The Drakhtari Hegemony was a military empire that believed in taking what they wanted by force. The Velshiran Syndicate was a corporate alliance that saw everything in terms of profit. Both groups had more ships and weapons than humanity possessed, but humans had something else. They had the law on their side. This was their legal colony. These were their homes. And most importantly, these were their children. Han Sol activated his communication system and sent a message to all human ships in the area. This is Commander Kim. We may face threats soon. Remember your duty. Protect the colony. Protect our people. Protect our children. As he looked down at the peaceful world below, Han Sol thought about the first Galactic Covenant. The law that protected children was the most sacred rule in known space. Surely even the Drakhtari and Velshiran would not dare to break it. 3 days later, the Galactic Council's decision arrived. It was delivered by Ambassador Nam himself, who took a fast ship to reach the colony personally. Han Sol met him at the shuttle pad. The ambassador's face was grim. They gave us an ultimatum, Ambassador Nam said without greeting. 30 standard days to evacuate all human civilians from the planet. After that, they will use necessary enforcement actions to remove us. On what legal basis? Han Sol demanded. They claim the crystals are too valuable to be controlled by one species. They say it's for the good of the galaxy. Han Sol felt anger rising in his chest. This is our home. Our children were born here. I know, the ambassador said sadly. I fought for 18 hours in the council chambers. But they have the votes. The smaller species are afraid to oppose the Drakhtari and Velshiran. That night, Han Sol called a meeting of all the colony leaders. Ji Woo Choi was there, along with Dr. Park and dozens of others. When he told them about the ultimatum, the room erupted in angry voices. "This is our home!" shouted one farmer. "My children don't know any other world," cried a mother. "We followed all their laws," said a teacher. Han Sol raised his hand for quiet. "I know this is hard, but we need to decide together. Do we leave or do we stay and fight?" The vote was unanimous. They would stay. As the meeting ended, little Taemin Lee tugged on Han Sol's uniform. "Commander," the boy said, "are the aliens going to hurt us?" Han Sol knelt down to look the child in the eyes. "Not if I can help it," he promised. But as he said the words, Han Sol wondered if any promise could protect them from what was coming. The 30 days passed too quickly. Han Sol Kim watched from his command center as alien ships began appearing at the edge of the star system. First came the Drakhtari war vessels, dark and angular like weapons themselves. Then the Velshiran. Corporate fleet arrived, sleek ships designed for business but armed for war. On the planet's surface, life continued as normally as possible. The colonists had voted to stay, and they meant it. Children still went to school. Farmers still tended their crops, but everyone could feel the tension in the air. Captain Byung-ho Kong commanded the orbital defense platform where Han Sol was stationed. He was a good officer, but his face showed the strain of the past month. "Commander," Kang said, approaching Han Sol's station, "we count 47 alien ships now. Our defense fleet has 12 vessels. The odds are not good." Han Sol nodded grimly. Earth Command had sent what ships they could, but humanity was still young in the galaxy. They didn't have the massive fleets of the older empires. "Any word from the council?" Hansol asked. Ambassador Nam sent one last message. The aliens rejected every compromise. They want the planet, and they want us gone. Down on the surface, Dr. So-Young Park was in her laboratory, trying to find a scientific solution to their problem. Maybe they could hide the crystal deposits somehow. Maybe they could make the planet seem less valuable. But she knew it was hopeless. The aliens had sensors that could detect the crystals from space. There was no hiding what lay beneath the colony. In the school, Mira Song was teaching her class as if nothing was wrong. She had been a teacher for 15 years and knew that children needed stability, especially during scary times. Today we're going to learn about the stars, she told her students. 8-year-old Taemin Lee raised his hand immediately. Teacher, Song, he said. Are we going to have to leave our home? Mira felt her heart break a little. These children had been born here. This was the only home they knew. Sometimes adults have disagreements, she said carefully. But your parents and people like Commander Kim are working very hard to keep you safe. Young Soo-Jan, a teenage boy who dreamed of becoming a pilot, looked out the window at the sky. I can see the alien ships sometimes, he said. They look scary. Ships are just machines, Mira replied. It's the people inside them that matter, and we have to hope they remember what's right. But hope was becoming harder to hold on to. The Draktari flagship Admiral Krexvor studied tactical displays of the human colony. The Draktari were a warrior species. They respected strength and despised weakness. To them, humans seemed like soft, emotional creatures who didn't deserve such valuable resources. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the humans refuse to evacuate. Their deadline expired 6 hours ago. Krexvor's reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. Then we will remove them by force. These humans need to learn their place in the galaxy. Sir, there are many human civilians down there, including their young. Then they should have left when given the chance, Krexvor replied coldly. The Velshiran corporate commander, Director Veltash, joined the conversation via communication link. The Velshiran looked like tall, thin insects with multiple arms. Admiral, we agreed to minimal damage to the infrastructure. Veltash clicked in their strange language. Those crystals must be extracted carefully. You worry about your profits, Krexvor growled. I will worry about removing the humans. What happened next would be remembered as the moment everything changed. Admiral Krexvor made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Instead of targeting the human military ships or attacking the colony's defenses, he chose a different strategy. Target the civilian areas, he ordered. Their schools, their homes. Make them understand the cost of defying us. His tactical officer hesitated. Sir, those are civilian targets. The first law was made by weaklings, Krexvor snarled. These humans need to learn that their children are not safe while they continue this resistance. Break their spirit, and they will surrender. The officer's training told him to object. The First Galactic Covenant was the most sacred law in known space, but Admiral Krexvor was his superior, and the Draktari military did not tolerate disobedience. Targeting civilian areas, the officer said quietly. On the human defense platform, alarms began screaming. Captain Kang stared at his sensors in disbelief. Commander Kim, he called out. The alien ships are targeting the colony directly, not our military positions. They're aiming at the civilian areas. Hansol felt his blood turn to ice. That's impossible. Check your readings. Readings confirmed. They're targeting the school district and residential zones. For a moment, Hansol couldn't breathe. No one had deliberately targeted children in 10,000 years. It was unthinkable. It was impossible. It was against everything the galaxy stood for. Raise shields around the colony, he ordered. All ships, move to intercept. But the human fleet was too small and too far away. The alien ships had positioned themselves perfectly for this attack. On the surface, warning sirens began to wail. Dr. Park looked up from her laboratory as the sound filled the air. She had heard those sirens in training exercises, but never for real. In the school, Teacher Song heard the sirens and felt terror grip her heart. Children, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. We need to go to the emergency shelter now. Little Taemin looked confused. Are we playing a game? Something like that, Mira said, guiding the children toward the reinforced basement. We need to go quickly and quietly. But they were too slow. The shelters were too far away. And the alien weapons were already charged and ready to fire. Admiral Krexvor watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. "Fire," he commanded. 37 energy beams lanced down from orbit. They struck the colony with the force of small stars. The school building where Taemin and his classmates were trying to reach safety simply disappeared in a flash of light. The Tae residential district where families were sleeping evaporated. The playground where children played every day became a crater of melted rock. The bombardment lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 8,147 human children were dead. Another 3,200 were critically injured. Dr. Park found herself running through the smoking ruins, looking for survivors. The hospital where she had been working was gone. The park where children played was a blackened scar. She found Taemin Lee in what had been the school's playground. The 8-year-old boy was still alive, but barely. His small body was broken and blood pooled around him. "Dr. Park," he whispered when he saw her. "It hurts." Dr. Park knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here, Taemin. You're going to be okay." But they both knew it was a lie. The boy's injuries were too severe. There was nothing she could do. "Are my friends okay?" Taemin asked. Dr. Park looked around at the devastation. She couldn't see any other survivors in the immediate area. They're at peace now," she managed to say. Taemin nodded as if he understood. "Will you tell my mom I tried to be brave?" "You are brave," Dr. Park said, holding his small hand. "You're the bravest boy I know." Taemin smiled one last time, then closed his eyes forever. Dr. Park looked up at the alien ship still visible in the sky above. They had done this. They had murdered children. They had broken the most sacred law in galactic history. "They broke the first law," she whispered, her voice filled with rage and grief. "They killed our children. The galaxy will burn for this." Across the colony, other survivors were emerging from the wreckage. Parents searching desperately for their children. Children crying for parents who would never answer. The lucky ones, who had been in the outer districts and survived the bombardment. Commander Han Sol Kim received the casualty reports on his orbital platform. When he read the numbers, he had to sit down. Nearly 9,000 children, dead, murdered by alien forces in violation of every law of civilized space. Captain Kang approached him carefully. "Sir, we have an incoming message from Earth Command and another from the Terran Federation Council." Han Sol accepted the communications with shaking hands. The message from Earth was short. "Casualty reports received. War protocols activated. Hold position. Fleet coming." The message from the Federation Council was longer, but it contained one line that made Han Sol's blood run cold. "The First Galactic Covenant has been broken. All previous restrictions on military operations are hereby suspended." On the alien flagship, Admiral Krexvor watched the destruction with satisfaction. "Send a message to the remaining humans," he ordered. "They have 24 hours to evacuate completely, or we will finish what we started." Director Veltash's communication was less pleased. "Admiral, there was no need for such extensive damage to the civilian population." "It was necessary," Krexvor replied. "Now they understand the consequences of defying superior species." But what neither of them understood was that they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping, something that other species had forgotten could exist. On Earth, the news of the massacre reached the Terran Federation Council within hours. In the Great Assembly Hall, silence fell as the casualty reports were read aloud. President Kim stared at the numbers in disbelief. "They targeted children?" "Yes, Madam President. Deliberately. The targeting was precise and intentional. The galaxy expected humanity to grieve, rebuild, and eventually surrender. They expected tears, diplomatic protests, and maybe a few angry speeches at the Galactic Council. They expected humans to act like every other civilized species had acted for 10,000 years. They were wrong. 72 hours after the massacre, every human military facility across 200 worlds went to maximum alert. Soldiers who had been on leave were recalled. Ships that had been in maintenance were rushed back to service. Weapons that had been locked away in secret vaults were brought out and prepared for use. Admiral Sang-Hyuk Lee stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Headquarters on Earth. He was 67 years old, a veteran of every major human conflict in space. He had gray hair, tired eyes, and a reputation for being one of the smartest military minds humanity had ever produced. He was also Tae-min Lee's grandfather. "Admiral," his aide reported. "All fleet commanders are standing by. Protocol Omega assets are fully activated. We're ready to begin operations." Admiral Lee stared at the holographic display showing the locations of human forces throughout the galaxy. For 50 years, while publicly maintaining peaceful relations with alien species, humanity had been preparing for this possibility. The possibility that someone would force them to remember what they had been before they reached the stars. "Sir," another officer approached. "We have confirmation that the Drakhtari and Velcheron fleets are still in the Kepler system. They appear to be preparing for mining operations." "Mining operations," Admiral Lee repeated quietly. "On my grandson's grave." The aide looked uncomfortable. Everyone on Earth had heard about the children who died, but Tae-min had been the Admiral's own family. The old man's grief was turning into something cold and terrible. "Sir, the alien governments are demanding we respond to their ultimatum. They want our remaining colonists evacuated immediately." Admiral Lee turned to face his staff. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a fury that made experienced military officers step back. "Gentlemen," he said, "for the past 100 years, humanity has been playing a role. We pretended to be just another young species, eager to join galactic civilization. We followed their laws, respected their customs, and tried to be good neighbors." He activated a security screen that showed classified information about human military capabilities, numbers and specifications that would have shocked any alien who saw them, but we never forgot what we were. We never forgot that we came from a world where survival meant being ready for war. While they thought we were weak, we were preparing. While they thought we were few, we were building. While they thought we were harmless, we were becoming something they could never imagine. Admiral Lee pressed a button that sent activation codes to facilities hidden throughout human space. In asteroid bases that no alien had ever detected, massive shipyards began their final preparations. In laboratories buried deep beneath the surfaces of human worlds, weapons that violated several galactic treaties were loaded onto waiting ships. "Project Prometheus is now fully operational," he announced. "All fleet commanders have their orders. We are no longer bound by alien law, alien customs, or alien mercy." Meanwhile, Specialist Yoonji Park sat in a secure facility on Luna, Earth's moon. She was 28 years old, a genius with computer systems, and one of humanity's most skilled cyber warfare operatives. For the past 3 days, she had been working on something that would change everything. "Ma'am," her assistant reported, "we've successfully penetrated the Galactic Council's main communication network. All their security systems are compromised." Yoonji smiled grimly. Alien computer technology was advanced, but it was also predictable. They had built their systems assuming that other species would think like them. They had never considered how a human mind might approach the problem. "Perfect," she said. "Prepare the broadcast package. Every inhabited world in the galaxy needs to see what their precious council ordered." She had spent hours editing the footage from the colony, the orbital bombardment, the dead children, the smoking ruins where families had lived and played. Most importantly, she had recorded communications between Admiral Krexivor and his fleet, clearly showing that the attack on civilians had been deliberate. Broadcasting in 3, 2, 1. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds belonging to hundreds of species, every communication device suddenly displayed the same message. The footage was horrifying, but the words that accompanied it were even more frightening. "Citizens of the galaxy." Yoonji's voice spoke in dozens of alien languages. "This is what your Galactic Council ordered. The deliberate murder of human children. The first Galactic Covenant has been broken by those who claim to uphold it." The footage showed little Tae-min Lee in his final moments, followed by scenes of other children who had died in the bombardment. "We are humanity. We tried to be peaceful. We tried to follow your laws, but you have taken our children from us. The galaxy will now learn what we really are." The message ended with coordinates and a simple statement: "We are coming." The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and varied. On peaceful worlds, civilian populations were horrified by what they saw. Many alien species had their own children, and the footage struck them deeply. They had believed the first law was absolute and sacred. But the military leaders of the major empires had a different reaction. They saw the message as a threat from a minor species that needed to be put in its place. Admiral Krexvor received the broadcast on his flagship still orbiting the human colony. He watched the footage with cold indifference. "Propaganda," he told his officers. "The humans are trying to make us look bad. It won't work." But some of his younger officers looked uncomfortable. They had joined the military to protect their empire, not to murder children. "Sir," one of them said carefully, "perhaps we should report to High Command that the humans seem to be preparing for retaliation." "Let them come," Krexvor laughed. "We have 47 ships here. Their entire fleet is maybe 200 vessels. We'll crush them like insects." What Admiral Krexvor didn't know was that humanity's entire fleet was not 200 vessels. That was just what they had allowed the galaxy to see. In the deep void between stars, where no alien sensors could detect them, massive human ships were emerging from hidden bases. These were not the small, peaceful vessels that alien species were used to seeing. These were weapons of war, built by a species that had learned the art of destruction on a world where only the strong survived. Admiral Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the TFS Taimin's Vengeance. It was a dreadnought-class vessel, 3 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Around it, a fleet that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen was assembling. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "all fleet elements are in position. We have 15,000 ships ready for combat operations." 15,000. Number was staggering. The largest fleet any alien empire had ever assembled was maybe 3,000 ships, and those were for major wars between galactic superpowers. "Sir," another officer added, "General O reports that ground forces are also ready. Special operations teams are standing by for deep penetration missions." General Eugene O was in charge of human military intelligence and special operations. Her forces were smaller in number, but trained for missions that would have been impossible for alien soldiers. Humans had learned war on a world where creativity and adaptability meant the difference between life and death. "Excellent," Admiral Lee said. "Send the order to all fleet commanders. Operation Retribution begins now." Dr. Hyunwoo Kim worked frantically in a research facility hidden beneath the surface of Mars. He was the lead scientist for Project Prometheus, humanity's most classified weapons program. For decades, he had been developing technologies that the galactic community had banned as too dangerous for civilized warfare. Planet-killer weapons, biological agents designed to target specific alien species, nano-machines that could destroy entire starships from the inside, weapons that would make the galaxy's current military technology look like primitive tools. "Doctor," his assistant called out, "the Admiral is requesting a status report on the special packages." Dr. Kim looked at the rows of weapons waiting to be loaded onto ships. Each one represented years of research and testing. Each one was capable of ending the existence of entire alien civilizations. "Tell the Admiral that all packages are ready for deployment. May God forgive us for what we're about to do." Back on Colony Kepler 442b, the survivors were being evacuated to safety. Dr. So-Young Park supervised the loading of wounded children onto medical ships. She had worked without sleep for 3 days, trying to save as many of the injured as possible. "Commander." Han Sol Kim approached her as she finished with the last group of survivors. "Doctor," he said, "I wanted to thank you for everything you've done." Dr. Park looked tired and heartbroken. "I couldn't save them, Han Sol. I couldn't save any of the children who mattered most." "You saved the ones you could. That's what matters. Now!" "What happens next?" she asked. Han Sol looked up at the alien ships still visible in orbit. They seemed confident, victorious. They had no idea what was coming for them. "Next, they learn why you don't hurt our children," he said quietly. The destruction of Admiral Krexvor's fleet was just the beginning. Within hours, human forces were moving across the galaxy with a speed and coordination that shocked every alien government. This was not the random anger of a hurt species. This was the calculated fury of a race that had spent generations preparing for war. the galaxy quickly learned why the ancient Vector Empire's final message had been a warning. Never wake the humans. They are not like us. They are something else. Entirely. On Dractari Prime, the capital world of the hegemony, emergency alarms were sounding in the military command center. General Thekvar stared at tactical displays showing human ships appearing in dozens of star systems simultaneously. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said humans had maybe 200 ships total." "Sir," his aide reported, nervously, "we now count over 15,000 human vessels and more are still appearing. They seem to have been hiding their true military strength for decades. Where did they get the resources to build such a fleet?" "Unknown, sir. But our analysts believe they've been preparing for this kind of conflict since they first joined the galactic community." General Thekvar felt a cold fear creeping into his chest. The Dractari were supposed to be the galaxy's greatest warriors. Their empire had conquered dozens of worlds through military might, but they had never faced anything like this. "Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Lee, the human fleet commander. Put it through." Admiral Sang-Hyuk Lee's face appeared on the screen. The human looked older than he had just days ago, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made the Dractari general step back. "General Thekvar," Admiral Lee said calmly. "I am Admiral Lee of the Terran Defense Forces. Your Admiral Krexfor murdered human children in violation of the First Galactic Covenant. As the military leader of the empire that gave those orders, you are now responsible for the consequences." "Admiral Lee," the general tried to sound confident, "surely we can negotiate a peaceful solution to this conflict." "The time for negotiation ended when your ships killed our children," Admiral Lee replied. "You have 6 hours to evacuate all civilian populations from Dractari Prime. After that, we will demonstrate what happens to governments that order the murder of children." The communication ended, leaving General Thekvar staring at a blank screen. 6 hours to evacuate a planet of 2 billion people. It was impossible. But the humans were not making an empty threat. Long-range sensors showed a massive human fleet approaching the Dractari home system. Ships like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before, armed with weapons that defied every known law of physics. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Lee studied tactical reports from across the galaxy. His forces were engaging Dractari and Velsharan ships in 17 different star systems. So far, human losses were minimal while enemy casualties were catastrophic. "Sir," Captain Do-hyun Park reported from the stealth destroyer Silent Fury, "we've eliminated the entire 3rd Dractari fleet in the Vega system. No human casualties." "Excellent work, Captain. What's your status on the corporate worlds?" Lieutenant Subin Lee, commanding a fighter squadron from the carrier Righteous, Anger, joined the communication. "Admiral, we've destroyed the Velsharan trade fleet at Proxima Station. They tried to surrender, but our orders were clear." Admiral Lee nodded grimly. The orders were indeed clear. No mercy for governments that ordered the killing of children. No quarter for military forces that carried out such orders. This was not a war for territory or resources. This was justice. Dr. Jin Yoon, a battlefield medic who had volunteered to document the war, sent regular reports back to Earth. Her messages showed the galaxy something they had never seen before. A species that treated an attack on their young as an existential threat to their entire civilization. "The human military operates with a unity of purpose that no alien government has ever achieved," she reported. "Every ship, every soldier, every commander shares the same goal. They're not fighting for conquest or glory. They're fighting for their children." What terrified alien observers was not just human military technology, but human psychology. Other species fought wars for territory, resources, or political advantage. They could be negotiated with, bribed, or convinced to stop fighting. But humans were fighting for something deeper. They were fighting for the principle that children should be safe, and that principle was non-negotiable. The siege of Dractari Prime became the stuff of galactic legend. Admiral Lee's fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly 6 hours after his ultimatum. The planet's defenses included orbital platforms, planetary shields, and over 300 military vessels. The humans destroyed it all in less than 6 hours. "Target the military command centers," Admiral Lee ordered. "Leave the civilian areas untouched. We are not like them." Human weapons struck with surgical precision. Every military installation on the planet was reduced to rubble. The planetary government building where the decision to kill human children had been made was completely vaporized. But schools, hospitals, and residential areas remained untouched. When it was over, General Thekvar sent a desperate communication from his emergency bunker. "Admiral Lee," he said, "please, we surrender. The hegemony surrenders unconditionally." "The hegemony no longer exists," Admiral Lee replied. "Your government ordered the murder of children. That government is dissolved. Your military is disbanded. Your leaders will face justice." Similar scenes played out across Velshiran space. The corporate alliance discovered that their sleek, efficient ships were no match for human warships, designed by a species that understood war at a fundamental level. Director Vel Tash, the corporate leader who had stood by while children were murdered for profit, tried to negotiate from his corporate headquarters on Velshiran's Central. "Admiral Lee," his transmission said, "surely we can reach a business arrangement. The Syndicate has resources that humans could use." Captain Park, commanding the Silent Fury, was in charge of the assault on the corporate worlds. Her response was broadcast across the galaxy. "The only business arrangement we are interested in is justice," she said. "Your profits were built on the blood of children. That business is now closed. The corporate headquarters was destroyed along with every other building that had housed the leaders who had supported the massacre. But again, civilian areas were left untouched. The galaxy watched in amazement and terror as humanity demonstrated something that had been theoretical for thousands of years. Total war, combined with absolute moral precision. Human forces targeted only those responsible for the decision to kill children. Military leaders, government officials, and corporate executives who had supported the massacre were hunted down with ruthless efficiency. But civilian populations were protected and even provided with humanitarian aid. Colonel Minho Choi led special forces operations that penetrated deep into enemy territory to capture war criminals. His teams moved like ghosts through alien space, appearing suddenly to take high-value targets and disappearing before enemy forces could respond. "Target acquired," he reported during a mission to capture a Draktari general who had helped plan the colony attack. "The general is in custody. No civilian casualties." This precision terrified alien governments more than raw destruction would have. It showed that humans could end any government, eliminate any military, and capture any individual they chose. And they could do it without harming innocents. After 6 months of conflict, the major alien powers were broken. The Draktari hegemony existed only in name, its fleet destroyed, and its leaders in human custody. The Velshiran Syndicate had been dissolved, its corporate structure dismantled piece by piece. But humanity was not content with simple victory. They wanted to ensure this could never happen again. Standing in the ruins of the Galactic Council, chambers on the station that had once been the center of galactic government, Admiral Lee broadcast a message to every inhabited world in known space. "Citizens of the galaxy," he said, "6 months ago, your governments broke the most sacred law. In civilized space, they ordered the deliberate murder of human children. They believed they could do this without consequences because they saw us as weak." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in across thousands of worlds. "You have learned that they were wrong. Human strength is not measured by the size of our fleets or the power of our weapons, though both are considerable. Human strength comes from our willingness to sacrifice everything to protect our children." Behind him, the shattered remains of the council chamber served as a stark reminder of what had happened to those who broke the first law. "Your old governments no longer exist. Your old military forces have been disbanded. Your old leaders are facing justice for their crimes, but we are not conquerors. We are protectors." Admiral Lee activated a holographic display showing the new structure he was proposing for galactic government. The First Galactic Covenant still stands, stronger now than ever before. Not because we enforce it through fear, but because every species understands what happens when it is broken. We are all children of the stars. We will protect them all. Dr. Yoon, still documenting the aftermath of the war, sent her final report to Earth. "The galaxy has been fundamentally changed," she wrote. "Not just politically or militarily, but psychologically. 1 year after the end of the war, the galaxy was a very different place. The old empires that had ruled through military might and corporate greed were gone. In their place stood something new, a galactic government based on the protection of all children, everywhere. President Haiwan Kim stood in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly Hall on Earth. She was humanity's elected leader, chosen not just by humans, but by representatives from dozens of species who had voted to join the new Terran Galactic Administration. 1 year ago, she said to the assembled delegates, "The galaxy learned what happens when the first law is broken. Today we gather to ensure it is never broken again." The assembly hall was filled with beings from across known space. Former enemies sat beside former allies. Species that had never spoken to each other before worked together on committees dedicated to child welfare and protection. Ambassador Young-Ho Park, the new chief diplomat for post-war reconstruction, presented the day's agenda. The old Galactic Council had been a place where powerful empires made deals for territory and resources. This new assembly focused on education, healthcare, and the rights of young beings everywhere. "Our first order of business," Ambassador Park announced, "is the establishment of the Child Protection Fleet. Captain Subin Lee will command this new force." Subin Lee, who had been a fighter pilot during the war, now wore the uniform of the Galactic Protection Service. Her job was to lead ships from many species in rapid response to any threat against children anywhere in the galaxy. "The protection fleet will include vessels from 17 different species," she reported. "We have Drakhtari ships working alongside human vessels. Vel-Shiran corporate craft have been converted for humanitarian missions. Former enemies are now united in protecting what matters most." Judge Minjung Lee, who had overseen the War Crimes Tribunal, stood to present her final report. For the past year, she had led the legal proceedings against those responsible for ordering the massacre of human children. "Justice has been served," she announced. "Admiral Krexivor died during the war, but his superior officers have been held accountable. Director Veltash and the corporate board that approved the attack have been sentenced to life imprisonment on the Memorial World." The Memorial World was a special planet where war criminals worked to build monuments and educational centers dedicated to the children who had died. It was not a place of punishment, but of remembrance and learning. Director Seung-Min Choi, who oversaw galactic rehabilitation programs, reported on the progress of former enemy soldiers and officials. "Many of those who served the old regimes have requested to join our protection services," he said. "They want to help ensure that what they once participated in can never happen again." This was perhaps the most remarkable change of all. Soldiers who had once followed orders to hurt innocents now dedicated their lives to protecting children from harm. But the real heart of the new galaxy was not in government buildings or military commands. It was in places like the rebuilt colony on Kepler 442b. Dr. So-Young Park walked through the new settlement, which had been reconstructed as a model community for the galaxy. Human and alien families lived side by side. Children from dozens of species played together in parks where memorials reminded everyone of what had been lost. "Dr. Park," called a young voice. She turned to see Hana, an 8-year-old human girl, whose family had moved to the colony after the war. With her was Zek, a young Drakhtari whose parents were part of the new diplomatic mission. "Are you going to tell us another story about the brave people?" Hana asked. Dr. Park smiled. She had become the colony's unofficial historian, teaching children about what had happened and why it must never happen again. "Today, I want to tell you about young Su Jian," she said, sitting down with the group of mixed-species children. Young Su had survived the massacre as a teenager. Now he was training to become a diplomat, working to build bridges between species that had once been enemies. Young Su was here during the terrible time. Dr. Park explained to the children. He saw what happened when people forgot that all children deserve protection. Now he works to make sure everyone remembers. The children listened with wide eyes. They had been born into a galaxy where such stories seemed impossible. But the memorials around them served as constant reminders that vigilance was necessary to maintain peace. In the space above the colony, ships from many species patrolled together. Admiral Lee, now retired from active command but serving as an advisor, often visited the memorial sites. "Sir," Captain Do-Hyun Park reported during one of these visits, "long-range sensors show peaceful activity throughout this sector. Trade is up, crime is down, and there have been no reported incidents involving harm to children anywhere in this region. Admiral Lee nodded, but his expression remained serious. Good. But we must never become complacent. The moment we stop, watching is the moment someone might think they can hurt children again. The old man visited his grandson's memorial every time he came to the colony. The small grave marker bore a simple inscription. Taemin Lee, age 8. He dreamed of the stars. Kneeling beside the grave, Admiral Lee spoke quietly to his lost grandson. The galaxy is safe now, little one. All the children are safe. We made sure of that. The transformation of galactic society had not happened overnight. There had been resistance from some species who felt that humanity's new role was too dominant. But these concerns had largely faded as people saw the results of the new system. Crime rates had dropped dramatically across civilized space. Not because of harsh punishments, but because the new government focused on education and opportunity rather than enforcement and control. Dr. Jin-Ah Yoon, who had documented the war, now worked as a journalist covering the positive changes in galactic society. Her reports showed schools where alien children learned alongside human students, hospitals where doctors from many species worked together, and research stations where the galaxy's brightest minds collaborated on solving common problems. The war changed everything, she wrote in her latest article. But perhaps the most important change is how we think about children. They are no longer seen as belonging to one species or another. They are seen as the future of all of us. This attitude had practical effects. When natural disasters struck alien worlds, human ships were the first to arrive with aid. When disease threatened young beings on distant planets, human doctors worked alongside alien physicians to find cures. The Drakhtari species, once known for their military aggression, had become some of the most dedicated protectors of children in the galaxy. Young Drakhtari soldiers trained not for conquest, but for rescue, operations, and disaster relief. We learned that true strength comes from protecting the weak, not dominating them, explained Captain Gorvan, a former hegemony officer who now commanded a protection fleet vessel. The humans taught us that children are not a weakness to exploit, but a treasure to guard. The Velshiran species had also transformed. Their corporate efficiency was now directed toward education and child welfare programs. Former profit-focused executives had become administrators of schools and healthcare systems. Business should serve life, not the other way around, Director Morvan explained to a gathering of young business students from many species. The greatest profit comes from investing in the future, and the future is our children. As the first anniversary of the new galactic government approached, preparations began for a special ceremony. Representatives from every member species would gather on Kepler 442b to recommit to the principles that now governed civilized space. President Kim arrived on the planet a week before the ceremony. She wanted to walk through the places where everything had changed, to remember why the new system existed. Standing in the memorial garden where Teacher Song's school had once stood, she was joined by Ambassador Park and other human leaders. Sometimes, I wonder what Taemin and the other children would think of what we've built, President Kim said quietly. I think they would be proud, Ambassador Park replied. We didn't just get justice for them, we made sure no other children would suffer, as they did. The ceremony itself was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of military parades or displays of power, it featured children from dozens of species presenting projects they had worked on together. Art, science, music, and literature, created by young minds working across species barriers. Hana, the 8-year-old human girl, and her friend Zek, the young Drakhtari, presented a painting they had made together. It showed children from many different species playing under the light of distant stars. This is what the galaxy looks like to us, Hana explained to the assembled dignitaries. Not as different species fighting each other, but as friends sharing the same sky. The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a new monument. Unlike the somber memorials to the dead, this was a celebration of life. It showed children from every known species learning, playing, and growing together. The inscription, written in every galactic language, read, "To the children of the stars who remind us that our differences make us stronger and our shared future makes us one." As the sun set over the memorial ceremony, President Kim addressed the galaxy one final time.